Good morning and welcome to A Course in Miracles 365, Awakening to Love, or good afternoon or evening if you're in another part of the world. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm your host, Tomas Garza, and I just want to say a couple of things here before we launch into a really and beautifully hard-hitting, and I do mean hard-hitting version of the workbook, lesson 14 we're talking about here. I just want to thank you all for tuning in and for all of the love that you've shared for me and for my wife, Cindy, who joined me yesterday. That was a lot of fun, by the way, to have her on as my very first guest here on A Course in Miracles 365. I will have other guests on, and in fact, I've already spoken with some people, and we're going to have some additional points of view in here, which I think is really handy. It's really helpful because a course is a self-study curriculum. I mean, it's a self-study course. This is one of the things that to me is so appealing about A Course in Miracles is that it's not a religion. It's not a dogma. And Jesus is not saying, here, you must do this or else, right? There's no threat of eternal damnation or punishment associated with it. And there's a decision placed in our hands where it rightly belongs to do these exercises or not, to choose love or not. The Course says in the text and the workbook in many different places that we have free will. We have free will to exercise free will, and God does not force us to do things his way or any way at all. Jesus does not force us to remember to do all of the workbook practice periods. I mean, of course, we're going to forget some. We're going to skip one or two. Who cares, right? Who cares? Our free will is not violated. We have the free will, so it's up to us to choose. It's a beautiful thing. It's all in our hands, in other words, as far as the choice. Once we make the choice, then of course it's all out of our hands. And we'll talk more about what is meant by that. But really, this is what's meant in any spiritual tradition by allowing and letting go, releasing control. We run around in life with a very dark and obsessive need to control, to manipulate, to orchestrate every single situation that we find ourselves in. How's that working out for us? You can look at your own life. I hope you do, suggest you do. Examine your own life, your own circumstances. How's that working out for you to try to orchestrate everything? Working out great? Exactly. Yeah. Well, I tried that in many ways for years, and it didn't work out well for me at all. I found myself in a career that was very helpful to people, but that wasn't personally fulfilling to me, and it drove me nuts. Now, I've found myself in abusive relationships, right? We all have found ourselves in situations where we were trying to run things the way we were taught, frankly, honestly, to run them, the way the world thinks we should run them. And did that work out for us real well? Well, if you're watching this live stream, if you're interested in A Course in Miracles at all, at some point you'll have to answer, well, no, that didn't work out so hot for me at all on any level. All right, so let's get back into the workbook. And Cindy shared yesterday, and I recommend that you go back and watch yesterday's video with her if you are, especially if you're just starting out in this course, because it's one thing she talked about this, and I really want to emphasize it again because it's really quite profound, and that's comparative reality. We look at people online who are teaching spirituality, and naturally we compare ourselves to them, saying, well, I couldn't do that. Well, actually, yeah, of course you could. Of course you could. And Cindy walks us through her own, well, her own process with that. And when she started picking up a course a few years ago, she was in a very different place. Now she's in a completely transformed and different place as a result of applying these principles in her daily life. And we're all teaching all the time. Not everybody is meant to speak to a worldwide audience. Okay, I mean, there's just, there's nothing special about me at all. I haven't done anything that you can't do. If you take nothing else from any of this, take that, right? I haven't done anything that you're not capable of doing. And when you look at anyone else that you may admire, teaching on a worldwide platform such as this, you can do anything that they're doing, but we all have different roles to play, right? Maybe your role is not to point a camera at yourself and start talking. Maybe you have a different particular function. And ask your guides, right? Ask the Holy Spirit, who's the guide here in the Course in Miracles, what that is. It's a great question to hold, to put out there. All right. Workbook lesson 14. If you've done this before, yeah, it's a heavy hitter. So let's delve into it. We've been looking at why we're upset, reasons why we're upset in the world, and why that is that we experience emotions like frustration, like anger, low-grade frustration, rage, bitterness, fear. Right? We've been looking at that and looking at our meaningless thoughts and the world as not having any meaning. So let's elaborate on that even further here today in Workbook Lesson 14, which says God did not create a meaningless world. Okay, so we're going to get into how you practice this idea in some depth and detail, because the lesson recommends that we go real deep here. This will unearth concepts for you. It will unearth fear. It will unearth insecurities. And it will get the ego really, really get the ego's attention. And the ego will fight back. Count on it. Count on it. We're told from an early age that, well, here we are. This is the way it is. The way we see things, feel things, experience things in the world, this is the way it is. So get used to it. Because our science textbooks say, this is the way it is. All right, well, yeah, Newtonian physics governs the world. If you drop an object, it's going to fall down. And if you jump up, gravity is going to pull you back down to the earth. Okay, great. That's only part of what's really going on. It's only part of it. God did not create a meaningless world. And to help with this idea, I always come back to the very intro to A Course in Miracles, where it talks about what the peace of God is. All right? Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. So what is real, what God created, is real. Nothing else is real. In other words, it's an illusion. So what we run up against in practicing this workbook lesson and this idea for the day is that it doesn't feel like that. What God did not create does not exist. So a part of this makes perfect sense if we're willing to accept that God is perfect love, just love in general, abstract, yeah, perfect love, then would perfect love create a pandemic? Would perfect love create murder, assault weapons, nuclear weapons, homicide, genocide? Would perfect love really create fear, global fear and paranoia? Really? I think not, right? Just a simple examination on our part would yield the answer, yeah, a perfect love wouldn't do that. So it makes sense. God did not create this. We did. Okay. This will engender fear. And I highly recommend, if you're following along here, workbook lesson 14, read it, read it, and do this every day. People do want to skip. I've had people come up to me and say, okay, well, Tomas, you know, I just read the idea in bold, but I didn't read any of the commentary, which actually describes how to practice the day's exercise, for example. Really important stuff, right? I just don't resonate with it, so I didn't read it. Well, read it, please. Read it, because this is really foundational. It's really fundamental. God did not create our predicament. We did. Spirituality is not all rainbows and unicorns. It's not positive vibes only. Positive vibes are beautiful, but it's not what the whole journey is all about 100% of the time. We've got to look at this stuff. Otherwise, nothing will ever change. The ego doesn't want us to look at it. That's why it pushes back. That's why you'll experience resistance to this. Guaranteed. And you know what? If you do, when you do, consider that it is supposed to happen. And ultimately, it's a beautiful thing because, as the workbook says, we're being led beyond fear. We're being led beyond fear to a place of peace and joy, love, happiness, you name it. We're being led to the peace of God, which is our inheritance. That's who and what we really are. It's a part of the process. In training our thinking minds to perceive things differently so that in the end we can let even that go. It's all about release, all about a process of release. How do you do this exercise? Well, God did not create a meaningless world. So the workbook recommends that you do this exercise today with your eyes closed. And think about all of the horrors in this world, okay? Whether they're happening collectively or whether they're happening to you or someone that you love, or even if you are afraid that they will happen to you or to someone that you love or to the world collectively. So the workbook gives several examples here in italics. With your eyes closed, say to yourself, God did not create that war, and so it is not real. God did not create that airplane crash, and so it is not real. God did not create COVID-19, and so it is not real. God did not create riots, so they are not real. God did not create that car accident, so it is not real. And it suggests that we go into detail rather than illness, say COVID-19 or cancer. God did not create that cancer, so it is not real. God did not create that heart attack, so it is not real. And at the end of the exercises, repeat, God did not create a meaningless world. Because God didn't create it, it's not real, period. Now, you can feel the ego resisting this. That's that voice in our heads to say, oh no, wait a minute, now wait a minute. I had this happen to me. It happened to me. It was real. Was it? Was it in truth? That's what we're going for here in A Course in Miracles. It's a thought system designed to change our minds and get us really thinking a different way, to perceiving things a completely different way. It's the exact opposite of how we were all raised, unless you happen to have been raised in a deeply, deeply spiritual house by parents that took this workbook or some other non-dual philosophy 100% to heart and taught you from that standpoint. And if that's the case, well, I'm very, very happy for you. That was not my situation. And I'm sure it's not the case with most of you. The ego will push back. Now, it'll push back on this and say, yes, it's real. Yes, this pandemic's real. Ultimately, no, it's not. God didn't create it. And search your own heart, your own feelings if you're doubting this, right? Does perfect love do anything other than love? No. It doesn't. Love extends itself. That and only that. That and only that. All right. You may wish to spend some time on these exercises as well. And as you've seen, I'll be having special guests on here, so I'm not running through the workbook a day at a time for 365 days. It will take me longer than that to get through it on this live stream with you. So if at any point, these are all going to be available on EWN's YouTube channel. They're available on my personal Facebook page, Change Without Limits. So all of these will be accessible to you. And if you want to spend more than one day on a given workbook exercise, I invite you to do that. In fact, the workbook itself says you may wish to do that because some of them you may find that you want to or need to practice more than once. I've found that each time I've gone through the workbook, in fact, I've found exactly that I've needed to spend more time with a lesson, either because it really deeply resonated with me and I felt I needed more practice, or I wasn't quite getting it. And I thought another day, another 2 days might really help. This is part of the beauty of this whole thing is that it's self-study. It's 100% self-guided. You know, you can spend more than one day on a lesson. You most definitely can. Okay. So let me take a look at some of the comments here while we still got the live stream running. And thank you all for joining me. I love each and every one of you, and the fact that you're here joining me is very, very important to me. It's one of the things that I really want to do is just turn this camera on and show up and share my experiences with you. So all right, so a couple of, and hello everybody. So a quick question here, yeah, hope, right, so what happens when we know that God did not create anything but love? What then? Well, that's a starting point. I love this question, yeah. What then? Well, we have the present moment. That's all we've got. It is right now. And we have a choice right now. Are we choosing love or are we choosing fear? We have that free will. As we've seen, God won't violate that free will by forcing us to choose love. Won't happen. And, you know, our own experience would tell us that. So what we have is a choice right now in the present moment to choose love, whatever that looks like in the moment. And you have to ask the Holy Spirit, you have to ask your guides. And if you're not familiar with A Course in Miracles, if you have other guides or spirit guides, angels, whatever that looks like for you, ask them, what am I to do in this situation. The Course teaches the same thing, that you give control of the situation over to your guides, to the Holy Spirit, to a higher power. In other words, you stop making decisions out of your ego. That's what happens when you choose love. So the question then, what then? Well, it's both relevant and not, in fact, because we know, if we accept that God is only love, what then? It's up to us to choose love in every moment. We are not going to be able to affect what someone else is choosing in this moment. We can only choose love, and that will, of course, have a ripple impact on people. It will go viral, so to speak. It will spread because love cancels darkness, but we have many, many billions of people around us in this world choosing darkness at all times. It's helpful to me to just bring my mind and my focus back to the present moment and show up and choose love, because I can't impact what everybody else does. So to me, what then? Well, you just show up right now. It's all we've got. Do it and then do it again and again and again. It's simple, but of course it's not easy, right? As we see, it's definitely not easy. So yeah, and I appreciate the questions. Yes, and hello everybody, Deidre and Robert, Cindy. Hey, how are you? Lorraine. I hope, yeah, thank you for the question. Guys, thank you all for tuning in. And I do check the comment thread throughout the day. So if I didn't get to you, then definitely I will look back and I will respond to the best of my ability here. And if this is something that's resonant with you, please share this with your friends. Please hit that share button if you know of people that would really benefit from this teaching, because it has brought tremendous joy to my life. And as Cindy mentioned yesterday, she's watched me go through this since 2013, and I'm a completely different person. So I can most definitely agree with that, attest to that. It's so profound, and it's a beautiful, beautiful process and transition. So let me know your questions, and I will be back here live tomorrow. And I'm going to look at my calendar, have a quick peek. So tomorrow at noon Eastern, so about 12:05 Eastern time here in North America. I'm hoping in England, I think that's 17 hours, I think, but check the show guide and you can see from there. Okay, thank you so much for joining me. And this has been A Course in Miracles 365, Awakening to Love. So let's emphasize that. That's what we're doing. That's what's going on. We're awakening to love, one decision at a time. All right. We'll see you guys tomorrow.